Hey guys, it's Crumb, and welcome to part 7 of things only old RuneScape players will remember. I'm really excited for this one actually because I found a lot of really cool tidbits from RuneScape's history that not only do you have to be an old player to remember, but you had to be a very attentive player back then, carefully looking at things like news posts, to actually have ever known about these. And some of them are very, very cool and surprising. I think you guys are really going to find this video interesting, even if you don't remember many of them. But if you do remember these, let me know in the comment section below, and if I missed anything, also let me know, and it'll make it into a future video. Alright, without further ado, let's get straight into these memories. The old seasonal event items are proof that you're an old player. Mainly bunny ears and the scythe. I want to talk about the scythe in specific because it was the last item actually added to the game before the release of RuneScape 2. And there's really an interesting history behind it that you will only remember if you kept up to date with the news postings around 2003. So originally, Jagex did not want to create the Halloween event for 2003 because they feared it would delay the release of the RuneScape 2 beta. And in true old school RuneScape spirit, they did a poll. They asked the players if they wanted the Halloween event, even if it meant the RuneScape 2 beta would be delayed. Or players could vote for the Halloween event to be scrapped for 2003, and instead, once the RuneScape 2 beta was released, they would do a pancake day as sort of compensation for missing this seasonal event. However, 78% of the voters wanted the Halloween event, so it went through, and RuneScape 2 actually ended up being released on time anyways because the developers came in early and on the weekends to do the extra work that was needed. Had this poll not passed, the scythe may have never existed in RuneScape from that Halloween event, which is an interesting thing to think. It's really become very iconic and synonymous with old players in the game, so much so that accounts with bunny ears or the scythe, or both, actually fetch a decent amount of money on RuneScape black markets, because having those items attracts attention to yourself in the game. They're really a cool item to have. If any of you were playing around with programs like Cheat Engine or any other type of hex editor, sometime after 2005, you may have come across this item. So it was called Hex Edit Detected. That was the item name, and it was simply a fish. But when you examined it, it would say your IP has been logged and pass the customer support. And this item would be automatically added to the player's inventory when the game detected they were using some sort of illegal hacking software to manipulate the data of RuneScape. Really, the purpose of this was to discourage players from using these sorts of software to manipulate the game. It was a way for Jagex to essentially say to the player, hey, we know what you're doing and we're watching you, so be careful. Typically, a hex edit doesn't actually pose any risk to the game because everything done is client-side. It doesn't actually affect anybody else playing. This item has since been removed from the game, but there's not a lot known about it, so if anybody ever had this item, please fill us in on the details in the comment section below. Could you actually keep this item, or was it simply there while there was some sort of hex edit present? What I mean by that is like, could you put it in your bank? Could you keep multiple of them? I'm really curious about that actually, so please let me know. Another thing that a couple of you keeners might remember is that there was actually a few Jagex mod items, kind of like the rotten potato today, that existed in the RuneScape 2 beta. The first of which was Ian's Helper, and this was an item specific for Ian Gower, one of the founders of RuneScape, to test the RS2 beta, and interesting enough, it actually used the model for the Christmas cracker as you can see on the picture. And then the second one for all Jagex mods was the Crunchy Staff, named after the mascots that used to appear on the RuneScape website asking you if you were a free-to-play account or a member account, and then later changed to pick your detail from low to high. Very cool stuff, and I would also like to note in these pictures you can see how different the item icons were in the RuneScape 2 beta. Today in old school RuneScape, things like the party hat looked nothing like that whatsoever. During the transition from RuneScape Classic to RuneScape 2, there was a lot of quirky things going on with the game, so I want to spend a little bit of time talking about that for anybody that actually played in that beta. You know, the first one is that for a short while, hit splats in the game were actually purple, and their little icon does not look like anything we're used to today. Along with that, they carried over the fatigue system from RuneScape Classic. For a short while in RuneScape 2, there actually existed sleeping bags along with a fatigue percentage. I'm really happy to see that this one never made it into the live game, because frankly the fatigue system in RuneScape Classic is a huge nuisance, and the random events that were later introduced were a much better system in my opinion. Having to enter in that stupid CAPTCHA every time you did a little bit of training to allow you to gain XP again is just a huge turnoff for new players to the game. Another one of these cool abnormalities about the game is actually this image of the Legends cape in RuneScape 2 during the very early days of the beta. We can see that it's just this plain white cape, and it doesn't look as cool as it did in Classic even. In Classic it had these cool golden shoulder pads and the whole shebang. If you had that cape, you were a very high level player. You worked for it, you earned it. It's like the max cape nowadays in RuneScape. But then in the beta they just turned it into this plain white thing. And I assume when players saw that, they were a little bit upset, the high-level players anyway. Of course, they probably had no intent of leaving it this way, but the RS community was much younger back then, so I wonder what type of backlash that might have caused. If any of you played back then, let me know if there was anything like that, I'm curious. Here's another really cool image that I found that I hope will bring some of you guys back to these early days of RuneScape. So this is the image of the RuneScape 2 beta login page, and as you can see, it looks very similar to old school. They really didn't change it between 2004 and 2007. And the text on this is actually kind of interesting. It basically just says that this is for testing / previewing only, and anything you do in the game will be forgotten when the beta ends. Really cool history there. I'm sure there's more than a few of you watching this video who played during this time in RuneScape's history. And one thing I want to bring up again is the community's opinion back then about the transition from RuneScape Classic to RuneScape 2. Originally, Jagex started talking about the release of RuneScape 2 in 2002. At this time, there was no talk of it being like a separate game, rather they just referred to it as a big 3D update. Then in 2003, they started actually referring to it as RuneScape 2. Eventually, with its release, they gave players the option of switching their accounts over to RuneScape 2, or allowing them to continue playing what had now been named RuneScape Classic, the first version of the game. And a lot of players at the time actually kept playing RuneScape Classic. Typically either because they enjoyed the game more, it's what they were used to, their computers couldn't run the new RuneScape 2, or their internet couldn't handle the new RuneScape. A lot of people at that time were actually using dial-up, which just couldn't keep up with the new game's update. And so a lot of accounts ended up losing out on the switch to RuneScape 2 because it was only up for a limited amount of time, meaning a lot of rare items, a lot of good accounts that people value were trapped in RuneScape Classic. And that's why there's rares in that game today, because of those accounts that never made the transition that had them. This one is actually quite interesting. So on the 13th of June 2005, there was a player that was manipulating the URL on the RuneScape website to try to see what they could find. And they ended up stumbling across a picture of a soul tiara. So this was big news because the item didn't exist in the game, and there was no altar to actually craft soul runes at. That wasn't released until 2017. So this created a speculation in the community of, is there going to be an altar released because we see this picture here? And of course, those types of discussions also mean that prices start to fluctuate, because if an altar is added to the game, then the price of soul runes is going to go down, so on and so forth. And of course, being 2005, the response from Jagex was to simply delete the picture from the RuneScape website and pretend it never existed. And with that, and without any release of the soul tiara or any sort of altar for it in game, the conversation died and was forgotten about. But in 2013, they released the RuneScape Companion mobile app. And with the release of that app, this stupid image surfaced again, and it re-sparked the conversation about the possibility of like a soul altar, possible merching opportunities, or if soul runes will go down in price, and all that fun stuff. And the image is actually still available on the RuneScape Companion mobile app. They ended up not deleting it. Now, with this speculation by players, there was never actually any release. Not for some years anyways. Recently, on the 5th of June 2017, we finally got that release of soul rune crafting with the introduction of the Fight Club quest. So nowadays there actually is an altar for crafting soul runes, and there is the soul tiara. But for 12 years, players laid in speculation because of this image about whether or not this would actually be coming out to the game. One thing I'm actually very curious about, because there's not a lot of public information about it, is exactly how the community reacted when this was first found in 2005, and then again in 2013. So if you're one of the players that somehow contributed to that discussion, please leave a comment in the comment section below, letting us all know the attitudes of the different players discussing this, because I'm sure that would be very fascinating to learn about. And that is all the time we have for this video. If I missed anything, please let me know in the comment section below, and I'll make sure it gets in the next one. Also, my channel has just surpassed 8,000 subscribers, so thank you so much. I hope you guys are all enjoying the content. This is unfortunately probably going to be the only upload this week because I'm doing some stuff in real life. Maybe I'll get 2 out though, that would be great. The next video for RuneScape glitches will be coming very soon. Hopefully going to be interviewing some people involved in a very shady part of the RuneScape community. It's going to be super interesting. Anyways guys, until next time, love, peace, and chicken grease.